Well, Rory, it's great to speak to you. I've been following Reflo for a while now. You've made a few waves. I'm just wondering whether you can just first of all give us a bit of a potted history of Reflo, your journey so far.
Absolutely. I'll give you a bit of an abridged journey because it's been a long venture. We've been around kind of open for around 2.5 years, which sometimes feels like 5 years, sometimes feels like 10 minutes. And originally, the kind of genesis of Reflow is around the idea of changing an industry. I don't come from the apparel background, never worked in the apparel background, but worked in the sports industry and saw a huge amount of waste that existed. And saw a lot of unsustainable processes that existed, especially in the merchandise apparel space. And I thought there's an opportunity to do things a bit differently. And just by chance, I found a company that was turning waste plastics into high performance fabrics. And through another opportunity I had and was working on, I had an opportunity to create a golfwear brand that and then the initial concept was a golfwear brand that we could put on some of the biggest athletes in the world almost instantly. And being really driven by sustainability and being naturally inquisitive, something that I just deep dived into. I was like, right, what can I learn about this? And quickly discovered fashion's the third most polluting industry in the world, that there's all sorts of parts of that industry which are fundamentally broken. And so went about setting on an idea of how can we rewire the way apparel is done in the sports industry, in the teamwear industry, in the fashion industry, kind of looking at every element of it and thinking, how can we do that better? And that's really kind of what we grew from and what we continue to aspire to be is the most sustainable apparel brand in the world who looks at every aspect of what we do and tries to do it better.
Wow. And just think if you can make a dent with that, as you say, fashion and the footprint it has and the damage that it does, but the learnings, could be so significant and just thinking of how that could extrapolate out. Okay, so why is treading lighter on the planet so important to you? And I guess embedding that ethos across your company is not the easiest thing, but how have you done it?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I've always been very driven by sustainability, always had a thought on my impact on the world. And actually, it's one of these things as you get a bit older, becomes more something to the forefront, something you think of a bit more. And, I about actually just at the start of COVID, when the world was going a bit crazy, I took the the personal choice just to really simplify my lifestyle. It's like I actually don't need a car. I don't, I can use public transport. And I had two cars at the time, which looking back on it was a bit crazy. And like I really wanted to try and minimize the impact I had and live in a one-bedroom apartment, keep my lifestyle as simple as possible and as impact-free as possible. And I think that's from kind of seeing that effect that as soon as the world slowed down during COVID, that the world kind of was starting to thrive again. And there was in Venice, the water became clear and you could see fish again. In California, you could see the mountains in the background because the smog lifted. And it made me really start to think about the impact I personally have. And then actually, as if I create a business, what positive impact that can have. So yeah, that's always the thought, is how do we leave the least footprint as possible? And look, it's impossible to make clothing and not have some kind of impact. So everything that we do is driven around the idea of reducing impact or creating positive impact off the back of it. So that could be our packaging is, for example, is all biodegradable. We don't use single-use plastics anywhere in our supply chain, meaning that if you were to receive a t-shirt from us, it would come in a cornstarch bag, which will biodegrade post-use. All of our products are made from recycled fabrics. We carbon offset our entire workforce, have no office, which, actually not just the office itself, but the contribution of people going into traveling and commuting to and from work, that's a big impact. Always looking at innovation. We've just developed a range of recyclable as well as recycled product. We realized that as we got further down this journey, end of life was a big problem. That, fast fashion means that most clothing ends up in landfill pretty quickly. So how can we stop clothing end up in landfill? And so we've developed something called Reloop, which currently is one set of products, but by the end of next season will be 30 odd products, which can be mechanically recycled, fiber to fiber recycled at the end of use. It's something that we're rolling out into sport now. So just signed with Jaguar Formula E racing team. And next season, 60% of their apparel will be fiber to fiber recyclable, meaning that when they change sponsors, when they do whatever they need to do, we can take it all back from them and fully trace it, fully track it, recycle it in the UK from from garment to pellet of recycled polyester again, and the other 40% we'll also take back and upcycle and do interesting things with. So yeah, we really see that as the kind of the next innovation, and we're always thinking of innovation. What's next? How can we do better? How can we leave less impact? How can we create more positive impact?
Yeah, I guess the recycling and upcycling part of the fashion industry is where you can really make a breakthrough, isn't it? Because I see some cool things going on. There are some Instagram feeds that are doing some interesting stuff. But if someone can actually do something concerted that is really going to change things going forward, just again, you think of the impact. And you're absolutely right about sustainability as a whole, by the way, and being your lifestyle, because a lot of people just assume it's going to be reductive. Oh, I have to give that up, or I'm going to have to make do without that. I'm going to have to change this for the worse. Whereas I think it gives me greater clarity. I think that, you are simpler, but better. And actually, it's something to be aspired to. Yeah, it can be luxury. There are so many things that it is that people don't think are associated with sustainability.
Sure.
Okay.
And as a brand, we've got to make sure that people aren't having to sacrifice something. Give people the sustainable choice to make that is easy for them. They're not sacrificing style, quality, in our instance, performance. Performance is key. Sustainable performance is kind of our key. So they're not, by buying a Reflo gym top, and if it's a choice of that or a Nike one, they're not looking at it going, well, I have to sacrifice something to buy the Reflo one. It is as good, if not better, than the incumbent. So that's also key to all of this, is that for mass adaptation of more sustainable practices to take place, in reality, do people really want to make a massive change in the way they're doing things? No. So that's both at the consumer level, the individual, but then when we look at scaling that into sport, looking at Jaguar again as the example, they're not having to do anything different as a racing team. In fact, that's the product they're seeing now. They're feeling that the quality is going up from anything they've had before, and it's got the sustainable story that goes with it. And as a customer who wants to buy some of that merchandise, nothing changes for them either. So everyone is kind of benefiting, and there's no sacrifice for anyone.
Yeah, and I think also when you're buying something, if you buy something good that lasts, well, A, you're spending less money, you don't have to replace it, and B, it's better for the planet anyway. I think actually making less stuff, making better stuff, that's a big key to this too. And if you make the right choice in the first place, then you're already on the right path. I want to talk to you about Harry Kane, Rory, because look, so many clubs over the course of this man's career have tried to sign him. Only one club has actually managed it. That's Bayern Munich, where he is currently. So, obvious question, how on earth did you do it? What is Harry's role, and how does his values reflect yours?
Absolutely, yeah, it's fantastic to have Harry on board. He's a great guy and actively involved in what we do. So, yeah, as a kind of, how did that start? He actually wore the apparel in something called the Icon series, which we were a partner of. I was actually there when he tried it on for the first time, and I had one of these surreal moments. We were only 4 months old as a brand, and he tried the clothing on, and his initial reaction was, because we were doing the media day, he was like, "What's this? This is really nice. I really like this. Never heard of this brand before." And one
Oh
of
my
those
God, I can imagine you must have been so nervous though, Rory. Like, as he puts it on, you're like, oh my God, hope
please like it.
he likes it.
100%. Yeah, please like it. Please like it. And yeah, and it was pretty surreal for him to say that. And I, spent a bit of time with him over that long weekend in New York, and he asked more questions, and he was genuinely interested in it. And then a couple of months later, get a message from him just saying, "I've continued to wear it. I continue to really like it. I like everything it stands for. I want to know more. Is this, I know you're a really new brand. Is this a side hustle for you? Is this something that you've got big plans for? Can I set up a call with my team to hear more?"
Wow.
So we did that. We initially took them through like our plans, our business plans. At the time, as a company, we were two people, myself and my co-founder. So we weren't a big behemoth, but straight away they believed in what we were doing, and that kind of philosophy of sustainable performance perfectly aligns with Harry's philosophy as a father of 4 kids. He wants to leave a better planet for his children, and he is very overtly aware of that, and it's something that he believes passionately about. Doesn't ever proclaim to be an expert, but he wants to align himself with people making a difference in that space. So yeah, we went back and forth for about a year, just kind of continuing to have conversations. We sent him stuff to wear and try, and he liked it. And as we evolved, that conversation evolved to eventually it got to a stage where they asked to invest in Reflo, and for Harry to become not only a shareholder but an ambassador who actively promotes what we do. And him and his entire team around him are actively involved. We speak to them weekly. I saw Harry last week at the Tottenham Bayern game that he kindly invited me along to, which was a nice homecoming for him, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a great relationship because he genuinely cares, and we all benefit from the growth of Reflo, and the world benefits from the growth of Reflo. So he wants to do everything he can within his power to make that happen. And there's some success stories in that space when you look at maybe Andy Murray and Castor or Roger Federer and on running, that athletes want to be more involved in what they're wearing and what they're doing than just being paid to wear something. So yeah, it works really nicely, and it's contributed to our growth no end. And it's pretty good to be able to send something to be tested on one of the kind of peak performance athletes in the world. Is like,
The
do you
England
like
captain,
it?
Rory. Oh, the England captain. Like, you just must be pinching yourself. And do you know what? I think also involved in brands in apparel that are purposeful, not just any brand, but a brand where they can feel the authenticity. I wonder whether that was one of the things that, yes, you're not a behemoth, but you're still very young. But the authenticity of the message must be very clear at that point, because you design it, you bake it in from the get-go. But I think what a sweet spot that is, by the way, in terms of the mass appeal, his incredible standing as an athlete, the England captain, record goal scorer, amazing career with Spurs, now with another huge team in Bayern Munich. But also he said that I'm not an expert. Why should he be an expert? He's an athlete, but he's learning. And that's what I love as well is, athletes learn. They learn very quickly. They're used to being coached. I'm sure that Harry's taken in an awful lot, and he's probably already, just impressed you in terms of how he's absorbing that and reflecting it back to you. Would you say that, he is kind of just picking up some bits and pieces?
Oh, more than just picking up a few bits and pieces. He absorbs things super quickly. I mean, an example of we gave him some new golf club head covers for his golf clubs, and they're actually made out of upcycled samples. So rather than throw our old samples away that aren't wearable or fabric strike-offs, we then hand make them into golf club head covers. So last time I saw him, I gave them to him, put on his golf clubs, and then a while later we did a shoot, and he was working with an influencer. His influencer said, "Oh, I really like these golf club head covers," just out by chance. And he went, "Yeah, they're actually made out of upcycled old waste polo shirts, t-shirts, hoodies. It's like really good. They turn things that most other brands would throw away." Well, he didn't actually say they, he said we, because he talks about us as we, which is pretty surreal as well. And yeah, we turn them into things like golf club head covers. So that's just one example of, it's something you remembered for a while. And I've also heard someone who played golf with him recently say he told the same story to them on the golf course. So he's clearly proud to be involved in something like that, but picks it up.
Should be charging you commission, Rory. Should be charging you commission. I'm sure he's got a lot of sway when he chats to people like that. Again, goes back to the circularity thing, right? We know that we need to become more circular. We need to drive towards, a more circular economy. We shouldn't be take, make, waste. It is reduce, reuse, recycle, recover when it comes to apparel as well. And that's a key thing that you're doing so well there. Now, Harry might say he's not an expert, but you know who are experts? Forest Green Rovers. And again, you've aligned with them, greenest football club in the world, according to FIFA, according to the UN as well. Okay, so you're providing their leisure wear, but beyond that, what do you hope this partnership will achieve? And you being, chatting to someone like Del Vince, who, has got such an incredible history in this space and has achieved so much.
100%. And as much as anything, that these partnerships that, that as an example is knowledge transfer, is what can we teach each other? And not just we teach each other. This is something that Forest Green Rovers are brilliant at, is their whole community of partners are there because they really buy into that philosophy of sustainability, and they punch well above their weight. If you look at some of the list of their partners, from Corn to Brewdog to, some huge brands, they're all brands who want to learn, be involved in sustainability and have a genuine passion about it. So for us, yeah, providing them their kind of travel wear and leisure wear is fantastic, and have the products available to buy in their shop is awesome. But actually, what we can learn from each other is epic. And yeah, we've got in October, I think, a big partner day at the ground where we'll all get together, share what we're doing, and hopefully that sparks some innovation, sparks some creativity, and a rising tide raises all ships. So the more we can learn, the more we can do with each other, the better. And that's why that partnership is just, some partnerships just make sense, eh? And that is absolutely
Yeah.
one of them.
Have you been to their grounds? Have you been to, I think it's called Another Way, by the way. You know, they've got Hotspur Way for Spurs, right?
Yeah.
But their ground is on Another Way, which is very much the Dale Vince kind of ethos of, we don't have to give stuff up, we have to do stuff differently. Have you been there? And if you're gonna go, honestly, the plant-based food on point. It is so good. Honestly, I was there, I was like, is this like gourmet? Am I missing something here? It's so good.
I haven't been yet. It's as I say, heading there in October. Hopefully I can get there before as well. But yeah, I mean, every time I'm in the UK, my plan will be to go and visit those guys because yeah, love what they're doing. And I mean, we've got LED boards around the ground now, so that's going to be pretty cool to see and things
Oh
like
yeah.
that. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and I've heard such good things about the food. You're not the first person to say that to me.
Yeah, everything is thought through, with so much clarity and imagination. A bit like Spurs Stadium actually. When you go to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium for the first time, the way I describe it is it's everything that you'd think of, and then a whole bunch of stuff that you could never have thought of. Because just the way it keeps the atmosphere, but every element of sustainability that's reflected in that ground in that stadium too is pretty impressive. Okay, so we've learned a bit about who you're associated with, the partnerships you've struck up. I wonder, what can the business community as a whole learn from what you're doing, try and apply it to their own company, their own workforce too?
Yeah, I think number one is that sustainability isn't a marketing tool. And I think when we look at the big incumbent brands, especially in our space, the old phrase greenwashing comes very much into play. A lot of the big brands like to talk about sustainability, and in fact, a few of them are kind of maybe stepping away from their sustainability messaging a little bit because they've been sued for false claims, which is, thankfully the European Union is putting quite a few laws in place about what you can and can't say, and if you're saying something, you've got to be able to back it up. So if I was looking at the big guys, I'd say, walk the walk as well as talk the talk, and we see far too much talking about it and not enough actually doing things, and that has to change. But in terms of I think it's a lot easier when you have it as your North Star metric, because all of your decision making becomes based around that, and it doesn't become we talked about sacrifice earlier. We never feel like we're sacrificing anything by making that choice, because it's what we want to do, and it's embedded within, with 21 people now, every single person is, when you're looking at the way of doing something, what's the most sustainable way of doing it, then you can, profitability obviously has to come in. We're a business, but if it's the difference between X and Y, then so be it. That's the way we're geared and with the way we operate. So I think it has to be genuinely built into the way a company wants to operate, wants to do things. And if you think in that way, then I think things become easier and more frictionless, because everything is geared that way. You can't look at it and go, we're going to do it so we can talk about it. And in fact, 90% of what we do, we don't actually talk about, because in reality, does the customer really care where we've sourced the hemp string that attaches our swing tag onto a pair of shorts from? No, they don't, but we care, and that's why we do it. But that doesn't exist anywhere on our on our website or our socials.
And I think also, people will care more if the product performs. I think that it's still got to be a good product. You can have all the will in the world and really nose it on the sustainability elements. But if it doesn't work, and if it's not something that they want that's desirable, well, that will just go sailing over their head. They won't take it in. But once they're in and they're a fan of the product, the brand, then suddenly you've got a much more captive audience there. And also, I agree with you. I think that it's also the mindset of wanting to make it your North Star metric and exploring that, because you never know where that journey is going to take you. I mean, just look at Forest Green Rovers and the journey that they've been on in terms of all of those things. So I agree. I think it's just that attitude of, right, okay, this is, what we value, we prioritize, we don't shirk away from. It's a hard conversation to have, but we're prepared to have it, and infusing people with it, having that tone of voice as well, that openness. I think all of those things really, really contribute. Now, Rory, let's get to one of the key parts of the conversation. Sport Impact Summit kicks off in December in Dubai. you come in, you're part of it. So what attracted you to it in the first place?
Um, I think when we first started conversations with the guys, the synergy was just, when I mentioned Forest Green Rovers, some partnerships just make sense. It was, the initial conversation was like, this just makes so much sense. I'm actually based in Dubai. We're a UK company as Reflo. Most of our team are there. I've lived in Dubai for 10 years, so know the place very well. And actually, we have a quite strong presence here in retail and at the golf courses and all sorts of places. But in general, hearing about the summit, everything that was planned around it, the messaging, the fact that I really enjoyed the fact that, Sean talked about some of the people that are normally in these rooms that you're like, why are we in a sustainability summit? And won't mention names, but this company, this company, this company, who are some of the biggest polluters in the world in the room and leading the conversation, they're not even invited, right? So it is, for me, it was not just a summit which is looking at getting some of the biggest polluters in the world, but want to talk about sustainability, who will chuck a check at you to be there, and so they have a voice. It was about actually he was trying to find, and the summit's trying to find people with a voice which is legitimate and brings people into the room who want to have that conversation and want to make impact. And whenever they heard of everything about it, we were like, right, we need to be involved in that. And what more can we do to improve, or not improve, add to the customer experience? That let's add some reflow into it. Let's do some, a paddle tennis tournament. We're big into paddle, and what more can we do? We don't just want to be a badging exercise, stick our logo on something and say, yeah, we're involved. We actually want to be involved, and that was kind of reciprocal. So it was perfect.
That's it. You've got to have that excitement about it too. I think sometimes you think, okay, well, actually, we're in the room, we're going to talk about what we do, but then adding that element, of, okay, we're into paddle, let's do something a bit more engaging and interactive. I think that, that's a key part of the way this conversation should be had. And paddle, by the way, I mean, what a start it's had as a new sport.
So good.
But once the US and the UK really get onto it, I think it will just absolutely explode even more. And what do you think is the most exciting thing about Sport Impact Summit? Any particular element you go, wow, that's special?
I think the focus on who is attending and why they're attending is, sometimes at these type of summits, you just kind of get a room full of people who may have an interest in what you've got to say, or may have an interest in changing the agenda, but actually the quality of attendee, I think, and the way things are being put together, not just what you'd expect from a traditional summit of, there's your set panels, and then there's a exhibition area with brands that are kind of building their stands, and which in its own is quite unsustainable because they probably get thrown away at the end. We've
all been to millions of those, haven't we? Just
yeah.
There's nothing different there. There's nothing particularly exciting there, is there?
Exactly. So that for me was kind of the fact that there's a core group of people in that room who want to create change, who are creating change and are open to that conversation, is music to my ears. I mean, so you can probably tell from this, I could talk about the topic of sustainability all day, and my friends will probably attest that I think
gives me someone to talk to about it as well. We've got to grow the community. We've got to get more people talking about it. But yeah, I think I can feel that energy. And I think that you're right. You've got to have the right quality of people who are senior enough to be able to affect the decision making, genuinely make change happen. Otherwise, what we're doing, and with sport as the biggest platform and biggest cultural influence there is in the world, Cristiano Ronaldo, well over 600 million followers on Instagram, just tells its own story. Yeah, I think that's what I think we feel at Sport Impact Summit, is that's the only way we can genuinely, shift the needle here, move the dial to where it needs to be. And we've got to get cracking with it. It's not like we've got all the time in the world. Rory, I just wanted to finish. What is the biggest thing we need to do right now to change the score, to genuinely create a healthier, more sustainable world?
It's a great question, and there's probably a long list of things. I think there probably needs to be a bit of a rewire on the world of consumption. Is that it's far too easy to buy, to consume. Everything's fast, everything is throwaway, and specifically, I think that's generally across the world. But if you look at specifically our industry, then the quicker and cheaper someone can do something, the better. And your quality drops off when you go, there's that famous triangle. So I think there needs to be a rewiring of business, of consumerism, and that actually speed and price aren't the defining factor on what makes something good. And we can work out very quickly if we're in a conversation, let's say some of our B2B conversations, whereas if the first two things that are mentioned are speed and price, we kind of say, well, we're not the guys to speak to then, because we're not massively more expensive, if at all more expensive than others, but if we have to stick everything on an airplane rather than sea freight it or across land, then it's going to have a far bigger environmental impact. And that's because not enough time has been left to think about this. So yeah, I think a rewiring on that mindset, and I think in a business perspective and a sports perspective, there needs to be someone sat at the top table with sustainability as a mandate, as a thought, as a way of thinking, rather than maybe kind of what I see at the moment is that big organizations have sustainability managers who sit 6 rungs down the ladder and they're trying to do their bit, but do they actually get to the top table and make, is there anyone sat on the board with that level of thinking? So I think that needs to change. And it is, I think, in a lot of ways, I am seeing that starting to change. So I'm not, it could change quicker and it could be better and more people could do it, but we are starting to see it happen. And that kind of fills me with some hope.
Yeah, and having that sort of mindfulness, things shouldn't be, at a rate of knots. If you can, good things come to those who wait. If you have to just wait a bit longer for, your lovely Hello Apparel or whatever to arrive to you because it's going by sea freight, not by air freight, well, you'll probably enjoy it and savor it more when it arrives. And you hear about slow living and health and mental health. It's all connected. It makes a lot of sense. A healthier planet and a healthier human race. These all things are affecting each other. I couldn't agree more with all of those sentiments. It's such an exciting time, both for Reflo and for Sport Impact Summit. It is, as you say, a perfect marriage. Really looking forward to you coming to Dubai in December. You'll already be there, but for me to be on stage and tell us even more. Thanks so much for speaking to us, Rory.
No worries. Thanks for your time.